Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Longing. Today we are going to be continuing to read Dream Days by Kenneth Grahame, but today is also going to be the day I put up a poll for which book we want to read next. So, if you would like to have a say in which book we do read next, be sure to check the community tab to see which books there are in the choice. Sorry, I'm mixing my words up here. There's going to be definitely the Iliad, because that was nearly the one we had last time, but I don't yet know what the other two are going to be, so be sure to go and check out the community tab to vote on that, and I'll leave it until the end of this book reading before I pick the next one, and then we'll just get straight on it. So yeah, let's anyway continue with Dream Days by Kenneth Grahame in the meantime. That was a bit of a ramble, I know. So anyway, let's go. The boy had secured a good front place, well up towards the cave, and was feeling as anxious as a stage manager on a first night. Could the dragon be depended upon? He might change his mind and vote the whole performance rot. Or else, seeing that the affair had been so hastily planned, without even a rehearsal, he might be too nervous to show up. The boy looked narrowly at the cave, but it showed no sign of life or occupation. Could the dragon have made a moonlight flitting? The higher portions of the ground were now black with sightseers, and presently a sound of cheering and a waving of handkerchiefs told that something was visible to them which the boy, far up towards the dragon end of the line as he was, could not yet see. A minute more and St. George's red plumes topped the hill. As the saint rode slowly forth on the great level space which stretched up to the grim mouth of the cave, very gallant and beautiful he looked, on his tall war-horse, his golden armour glancing in the sun, his great spear held erect, the little white pennon, crimson-crossed, fluttering at its point. He drew rein and remained motionless. The lines of spectators began to give back a little, nervously, and even the boys in front stopped pulling hair and cuffing each other, and leaned forward, expectant. "Now then, dragon," muttered the boy, impatiently, fidgeting where he sat. He need not have distressed himself, had he only known. The dramatic possibilities of the thing had tickled the dragon immensely, and he had been up from an early hour, preparing for his first public appearance, with as much heartiness as if the years had run backwards, and he had been again a little dragonlet, playing with his sisters on the floor of their mother's cave, at the game of saints and dragons, in which the dragon was bound to win. A low muttering, mingled with snorts, now made itself heard, rising to a bellowing roar that seemed to fill the plain. Then a cloud of smoke obscured the mouth of the cave, and out of the midst of it the dragon himself, shining sea-blue, magnificent, pranced splendidly forth, and everybody said, "Ooh," as if he had been a mighty rocket. His scales were glittering, his long spiky tail lashed his sides. His claws tore up the turf and sent it flying high over his back, and smoke and fire incessantly jetted from his angry nostrils. "Oh, well done, dragon," cried the boy, excitedly. "Didn't think he had it in him," he added to himself. St. George lowered his spear, bent his head, dug his heels into his horse's sides, and came thundering over the turf. The dragon charged with a roar and a squeal, a great blue whirling combination of coils and snorts and clashing jaws and spikes and fire. "Missed," yelled the crowd. There was a moment's entanglement of golden armour and blue-green coils and spiky tail, and then the great horse, tearing at his bit, carried the saint, his spear swung high in the air, almost up to the mouth of the cave. The dragon sat down and barked viciously, while St. George, with difficulty, pulled his horse round into position. End of round 1, thought the boy. How well they managed it, but I hope the saint won't get excited. I can trust the dragon all right. What a regular play actor the fellow is. St. George had at last prevailed on his horse to stand steady, and was looking round him as he wiped his brow. Catching sight of the boy, he smiled and nodded, and held up 3 fingers for an instant. It seems to be all planned out, said the boy to himself. Round 3 is to be the finishing one, evidently. Wish it could have lasted a bit longer. Whatever's that old fool of a dragon up to now? The dragon was employing the interval in giving a ramping performance for the benefit of the crowd. Ramping, it should be explained, consists in running round and round in a wide circle and sending waves and ripples of movement along the whole length of your spine, from your pointed ears right down to the spike at the end of your long tail. When you are covered with blue scales, the effect is particularly pleasing. And the boy recollected the dragon's recently expressed wish to become a social success. St. George now gathered up his reins and began to move forward, dropping the point of his spear and settling himself firmly in the saddle. Time, yelled everybody excitedly, and the dragon, leaving off his ramping, set up on end and began to leap from one side to the other with huge ungainly bounds, whooping like a red Indian. This naturally disconcerted the horse, who swerved violently, the saint only just saving himself by the mane, and as they shot past the dragon, delivered a vicious snap at the horse's tail, which sent the poor beast careering madly far over the downs, so that the language of the saint, who had lost a stirrup, was fortunately inaudible to the general assemblage. Round 2 evoked audible evidence of friendly feeling towards the dragon. The spectators were not slow to appreciate a combatant who could hold his own so well and clearly wanted to show good sport, and many encouraging remarks reached the ears of our friend as he strutted to and fro, his chest thrust out and his tail in the air, hugely enjoying his new popularity. St. George had dismounted and was tightening his girths and telling his horse, with quite an oriental flow of imagery, exactly what he thought of him and his relations, and his conduct on the present occasion. So the boy made his way down to the saint's end of the line, and held his spear for him. "It's been a jolly fight, St. George," he said with a sigh. "Can't you let it last a bit longer?" "Well, I think I'd better not," replied the saint. "The fact is, your simple-minded old friend's getting conceited. Now they've begun cheering him, and he'll forget all about the arrangement, and take to playing the fool. There's no telling where he would stop. I'll just finish him off this round." He swung himself into the saddle and took his spear from the boy. "Now, don't you be afraid," he added kindly. "I've marked my spot exactly, and he's sure to give me all the assistance in his power, because he knows it's his only chance of being asked to the banquet." St. George now shortened his spear, bringing the butt well up under his arm, and, instead of galloping as before, trotted smartly towards the dragon, who crouched at his approach, flicking his tail till it cracked in the air like a great cart-whip. The saint wheeled as he neared his opponent, and circled warily round him, keeping his eye on the spare place, while the dragon, adopting similar tactics, paced with caution round the same circle, occasionally feinting with his head. So the two sparred for an opening, while the spectators maintained a breathless silence. And with that, we come to the end of the reading portion. And I'll just give a quick reminder. If you want to have a say in what book we read next, be sure to check the community tab after this episode is live. It might actually be up slightly before as well, but be sure to check the community tab if you do want to have a say in which book we read next, as I'm going to be putting a poll up today to be read after this one. But otherwise, I will say thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.